G'day there guys, it's your Aussie Hubby Markee, back at it again with another episode of r/MaliciousCompliance. Now if you love me like I love you, then you know what to do. I want you to mosey on over to that old like button and tackle it like Steve Irwin would tackle a crocodile. Maybe even chuck an Aussie flag down in the comments. Now with that said, I want you to sit back, relax, chuck a prawn on the barbie, and get ready for some bloody maliciously complying people. Now our first post of the day is by user Deba, titled, "No problem, I'll print that video for you, and while I'm at it, I might have you fired as well." Hey all, this is my first submission to this sub and I hope you enjoy it. There's a TLDR at the bottom. Context. This happened a few years ago. I was 18 and working as a receptionist for a community nursing service. As the youngest in the team by a long shot, the average age of employees being around 55 to 60, I was usually the one responsible for the computer stuff, mostly just simple things, nothing a quick Google couldn't solve. The other staff members were wonderful and I learned a lot from working with them. Except for the assistant manager, Karen. This woman was the bane of my existence. She was 75 plus, recently came out of a 15-year retirement as a receptionist, and was armed with a certificate in business management from a 4-hour online business course. She refused to use basic computer skills such as Word or email, stating that she didn't need to learn them again when she had others to do it for her, namely me. In a 5-hour shift, I would spend 3 hours just fielding her tasks. Needless to say, this came along with all the fun personality traits that make her a manager from hell. Malicious compliance. At the start of my shift, I received an email from Karen asking me to print the attached files. One was a PDF and the other was an MP4. So assuming she just meant the PDF, I take the printed copy to her. This is roughly how the exchange went. "Why do you only have one file? I sent 2? You want me to print an MP4? Isn't that what I asked? A monkey could do your job better than that." Here, I'm pretty sure she laughed at her own joke. Me, desperate. "Look, I don't think you understand. Don't try and teach me. Don't forget I did your job for 20 years and now I could have you fired." Already over it and ready for some malicious compliance. "Okay, well, I've never printed this type of file before, so it might take a while." Karen interrupts and says, "I don't care how long it takes, I'm your boss and I've told you to do this. Once it's done, you can move on to the other jobs." I'm grinning ear to ear at this point. I get back to my desk and send her an email summarizing our conversation and explicitly clarifying she wanted me to print an MP4, to which I got a snarky reply. Perfect. I spent the next 4 to 5 hours pausing the video every 2 to 3 frames, screenshotting it, pasting it to a Word document, and printing. The administrative tasks piled up, not that Karen noticed, because she mostly spent her time reading magazines and talking on the phone. I felt bad as this placed an extra load on the other receptionists. However, since Karen was universally hated, they gave me their blessings. Once complete, I took about 100 pages carefully held with clips to her desk and sweetly told her that I'd printed the other file. She looked smug until she saw what was in front of her. Page after page of almost the same picture as the man moves through the video, some slightly blurry, all in full color. She was furious, to say the least, but I was 1 hour overtime on my shift, and Karen knew that would already cause her some issues, so she let me leave. Though I knew it wasn't over yet. As expected, I get called into HR for a meeting the following week, where they accused me of wasting company time and not complying with management. I explained the situation in detail and showed them the email, including her awful reply. I also showed them a few more emails and texts where Karen used some particularly descriptive words to insult our staff members, including the very HR rep taking my interview. Turns out this was the straw that broke the camel's back, as Karen had multiple reports against her from other staff members, and she had been driving HR insane with her own complaints. She lost her job the following week. The best part is that this happened on a Sunday, where I got double pay. I took some of that sweet overtime cash and brought in cupcakes to work once Karen was gone. I said it was an end-of-week treat, but we all knew what we were celebrating. The HR rep seemed to particularly enjoy hers. Alright, and our next post is by user AussieBloke777. Yeah, Aussie Bloke, that's me. Don't tell me my dog is fat. So, It was many years ago that I was a locum veterinarian at a small suburban veterinary clinic. For the most part, the clients were a pleasure to work with, were receptive to the advice and instructions given to them by the staff in regards to their pets, and it generally made my time working there a placid experience. Every rare once in a while though, a client's account would be flagged as non-compliant. This usually meant that the client who didn't follow medication instructions, post-operative procedures, scheduled rechecks, general health advice and so forth, usually resulting in cases not progressing as well as they should have. Of course, some of these clients would also complain about said poor outcome, and the fault was of course never theirs. Enter one particular Miss Non-Com. Since I was only a part-time locum, working every other weekend at the time of this particular clinic, I seldom saw a client more than once unless they specifically requested to see me again. As such, I had never met Miss Non-Com before, but plastered at the top of her file was the dreaded non-compliant. Miss Non-Com owned a Jack Russell Terrier that had an extensive history with the clinic, and as I browsed the history of the patient prior to the consultation to familiarize myself with them, it was painfully obvious that Jack was far too fat to be healthy. In fact, there was enough of Jack to make another Jack with some Jack to spare. Jack was due his annual vaccination and checkup, so I asked them to enter the consultation room, which they did at a leisurely pace due to the fact that Jack was barely able to keep up with Miss Non-Com, who she herself was not particularly fast due to her own bodily dimensions. It was somewhat apparent why Jack was struggling with weight issues when his owner was apparently having the same difficulties. Typically, in a situation like this, I would be as careful as I could to not offend the owner or make any assumptions about their current bodily state, as it's common for large owners to likewise have large pets, and suggestions have to be made appropriately without blatantly putting too much blame on the owner. However, my desire to be tactful went straight out the window when Miss Non-Com, with a sour expression on her face, which also appeared to have the remnants of a candy bar smeared on one cheek, heaved her panting Jack onto the table and greeted me with an irritable, "Jack needs his needles, and don't tell me my dog is fat." Well, very well. Jack was only 5 years old, far too young to be the size he was, though no pet of any age should ever be as fat as he was, and his history had revealed a host of maladies that resulted from his size. Abrasive skin damage of his chest and belly dragging on the ground, skin fold dermatitis, recurrent yeast infections of his ear canals that were squeezed shut by a neck that was no longer a neck, but merely a globular extension of his thorax, degenerative joint disease, upper airway disease, the list went on. Now, unfortunately, one shortcoming of the clinic I worked at was the senior veterinarian there who owned the practice was a very senior fellow indeed, who had long lost his passion for the job and seemed to be content to just let things slide with the more difficult clients, treating the patients symptomatically rather than addressing the underlying problem. I decided that now was the time to assert my new blood. I have a habit that as I gather the history of the patient from the last time they were seen, I dictate it to myself as I type it into the history of the file. This gives the client a chance to correct anything I may have misheard or add something they remember as I repeat it. And thus I did with Jack, complying with Miss Non-Com's desires that I do not tell her that her dog was fat. The patient at presentation of the consultation is morbidly obese, and at weigh-in is half a kilo heavier than at last consultation, presenting with moderate to severe dyspnea, likely complicated by excess adipose tissue deposition in and around the thorax. I looked up from my typing. "How much are you feeding Jack these days?" Miss Non-Com shot me a poisonous look, but perhaps because she hadn't met me beforehand and thought perhaps I hadn't quite heard her entering remark, responded, "Picture the cockroach guy from Men in Black.
He's getting 2 meals a day. What you recommend last time I was here? Should be all in your records there."
It certainly was. The amount recommended should have been fine to encourage weight loss, even in the face of limited exercise. So I forged on my history writing, "Patient is consuming recommended diet but has failed to shed any excess body mass since last seen 5 months ago." Another sideways glance from Miss Non-Com, and this time her cheeks flushed a little. I proceeded with the physical exam of the patient, and with each problem I noted as a result of his being overweight, I used a different synonym. Hefty, rotund, enlarged, bloated, and a variety of other fat but not fat words were used as I typed up the findings. And in my peripheral vision, I could see Miss Noncom's complexion turn from pink to tomato to beetroot. It was when I reached the point of Jack carrying a lot of weight to the opera that she exploded.
How dare you? I told you not to tell me he's fat. There's nothing I can do about it, so stop telling me.
I mustered my most pained look I could imagine. But ma'am, I never once used the word you explicitly told me not to use. And as far as there being nothing that can be done, the history states you've refused testing to determine if he has thyroid, adrenal, or other disease that may be complicating his weight loss. This really isn't in his best interests. If money is an issue, we do have payment plans that can help spread out the cost of such testing. I didn't get to finish, as Miss Noncom scooped Jack off the table, berating me and the entire staff of the clinic as she rumbled her person out of the clinic as fast as she could, and swearing that my boss would hear about this. No sooner had the doors shut, I heard the nursing staff burst out giggling, and my boss poked his head out of the adjoining consult room where I'm sure he'd heard the entire exchange. He simply sighed, shrugged, and said, "Well, I didn't hear you say the word fat once," before closing the door. I later learned that Miss Noncom had returned the following week when I was not present. And not only had Jack vaccinated after complaining to my boss, but also conceded to having blood work done, which revealed an underactive thyroid. Jack was subsequently started on thyroid supplementation, and by the following year was much healthier and appropriate weight. Rightio boys and girls, we're on to our next post by Adustar, titled, "You want to kick me out of the hospital workstation room that I prepped for the day?" I am a radiology resident, and luckily the facility I'm working at allows for each resident to be separated in individual workstation rooms for reading imaging. This morning I grabbed one of the rooms, spent a while cleaning it all up to make it safe for me to spend the day in. Another resident, who showed up late, came in the door and demanded that I leave the room because it was assigned to him. I chose the room because I knew the dictation microphone didn't work, so all reports would have to be typed, and I was on a rotation that was light on volume, so it wasn't a big deal to type the reports for me. He started to squeeze his way in and box me out, and because of his persistence, I let him. I packed all of my things to head to a different room, got up and headed out the door. Right before shutting the door I told him, "Oh, by the way, the dictaphone doesn't work in this room." As I sit here typing this, I am watching him read case after case, which he has to individually type. Meanwhile, I have spent the day studying and relaxing in my new cleaned room. Edit: no, the room was not assigned to him. And our next post is by AC1308. "You won't pay out my annual leave while I'm on vacation? I won't take vacations." I've been doing security for about 16 years now, and about 10 years ago, I was doing on-again, off-again shifts at a particular site, not relevant where. Anyway, I had a decent amount of annual leave hours under my belt, so I decided to take a vacation in a city down the coast, visiting a friend. The understanding was that while I was on vacation, my annual leave hours would pay out as if I was still working, but with 17% leave loading. Woo! So, about halfway through my vacation, the day after I'm due to get paid, I casually check my account, and the number is nowhere near what it should be. I go, okay, maybe they're a day late. 4 days later, after I get home, no improvement. So I ring up work and ask them what's the deal. What I get back is that when I'm on vacation, annual leave pays out on my regular roster hours, but I wasn't getting regular roster hours, so they were paying me for about 1 hour a day instead of 8. I said, I went on vacation to use up my annual leave. They said, well, that's what the rules are. So I stopped taking vacations. My annual leave hours built up and built up. The company doesn't like anyone holding a huge number of annual leave hours, because if someone decided to quit out of the blue, the payout would be amazing. Saw one guy do this. He had enough hours to take the year off, then he retired. So about 6 months later, they came to me and said, why aren't you taking vacations? I said, I can't afford to. You guys don't pay out my annual leave hours while I'm off. Silence on the other end. Then, we'll see about that. All of a sudden, the policy changed and I took a nice long vacation. Rightio, and our next post is by Angel61612, titled, My girl wants those 2 bikinis and you will give me a deal. My family owned a couple stores on a beach that sold t-shirts, towels, and bikinis. The bikinis were a big seller and we decided to mark them down for the week from $39.99 to $24.99. I put a sign up that showed the sale price and roughly an hour later, a little kid knocked the sign down. Before I could replace it, a big, sweaty, intimidating gentleman comes up to me and slams his hands on the counter. Sweaty man's like, yo, my girl wants these 2 bikinis and you're gonna give me a deal, or I'd take my business elsewhere. I was gonna tell him about the sale, but once he demanded a deal, he tried to intimidate me with his size and slamming on the counter. I decided against it. I said, I'll give you 2 for $60. Done. Completed the sale, and as the man was leaving, I put the sale sign back up. Epic. Rightio gamers, our next post is by It's a Phoebe, titled, Leave You the Hell Alone? Got it. So, this is happening at the moment in time, so the full fallout isn't here yet. My soon-to-be ex-husband filed for divorce after I finally got the balls to move out after he started physically abusing me. No big deal, I was planning on filing anyways. Caster, not real names, Matt, soon-to-be ex-husband, Jen, awesome attorney, Steve, soon-to-be ex-husband's awful attorney, awful for reasons like misspelling last names and addresses, not answering phone calls or calling back, taking up to 2 weeks to reply to emails, etc. And me is me. So, I found a great attorney, Jen, who took my case pro bono. Since we were living together all of 2019 and I moved out in 2020, Jen told Steve she felt that Matt and I should split tax return 50-50. She also mentioned since he made significantly more than I did, he should pay $500 to Jen as my attorney fees. Edit to add that I went through a legal aid service and the lawyers don't charge the clients, but sometimes go for the other party for some form of compensation. Well, X did not like this. He called me. Edit again to add that we hadn't even had a judgment of divorce written up yet, and the first one of his lawyers sent us excluded the attorney fees. Matt's like, hey, so since I have to pay $500 of your lawyer's fees, I am taking that from your tax return check. I say, that's not how that works. I have nothing to do with her requesting lawyer fees, and even if I did, you would be forced to pay that $500 back to me when we go to court. Well, we had a deal. No, we didn't. That you'd talk to your lawyer about the fees, and you didn't. Because we didn't have an agreement, buddy. I say I did not agree with that. I only agreed to half the tax return, and all my stuff before marriage coming with me. Matt sighs loudly. I can tell he's getting angry. Look, can I come get my check? I have bills I gotta pay and my work is shut down. Will you leave it under the doormat? No, I will hand it to you when you get here. No thanks, I'd rather not have to see you. Please have the check for half of tax return under the doormat. Matt, now screaming, why do you have to make things so difficult? Just leave me the hell alone. And with that, he hung up. Leave him the hell alone? Got it. I emailed Jen to make sure it was okay to block his number on my phone, and she said as long as she has an email, he can use it to communicate with me, I could. So I sent, if you need to contact me, please do so at X email and include both attorneys, and I blocked his phone number. Thing is, Steve did not take his case pro bono, so every single time my attorney and his attorney email, half an hour of time gets added to his bill since the minimum pay is 30 minutes. Edit, people in the comments are pointing out lawyers don't typically charge for a 30-min minutes. I want to say I don't know the exact pricing of his lawyer, as he is not my lawyer. But if 30 minutes seems crazy, I am probably incorrect on this, and it's probably actually more like 15 minutes min. All because he decided to act like a child. Alright, and our next post is by user Flapjack39225, titled, My Neighbor Gets What She Deserves. So this happened last week and I am proud of myself for it. I'm English, so I'll spell mum as mum. During this pandemic, I have found peace by sitting in the garden watching YouTube videos and scrolling Reddit. I always sit on my swing chair. A swing chair is a chair mixed with a swing, so you sit in it and swing without any annoying chains or having to go out. My swing chair has been through a lot. So much so, to the point where if you sit on it, it squeaks a bit. I like the squeaks though, so I keep using it. My neighbor hates my family. Ever since my mum, my brother and I moved in to my now stepdad's house, she especially hates me for some reason. One day my parents got the say off from work, so we were all home. I was out on the swing chair listening to music using headphones. All of a sudden, a bucket gets thrown over the fence and almost hit me. I jumped and took off my headphones. I asked, "Who did that?" My neighbor responded with, "Stop swinging on your chair. You're distracting my children and making them jealous. Either stop or give it to me." I asked, "How am I distracting them?" She replied with, "The sound makes them look through the hole they've made in the fence." I said that I'll stop, and here is the malicious compliance. I stopped going on my swing chair and instead picked up an old hobby of mine, drumming. I played it so much that my family would sometimes have to speak louder to talk to me. This is where it gets weird though. She then phoned my personal phone that I never gave the number to anyone except my close friends. Apparently she had gone to my mum's Facebook, searched a pic of me and my friends, found my best friend's number by some means, and posed as my aunt, asking for my number so she could check up on me. She called me yelling at me to stop drumming. I said why, and she said because of the noise. I said that she said that I had to stop swinging, so I took up a hobby. She hung up. I now go on my swing chair, play drums, and play drums with my brother on his guitar. Revenge is best served cold. And our next post is by Dumb or Die, titled, "Health Inspector Shows Me How to Clean the Slicer Correctly." So I used to work part-time at a sandwich shop during college, about 9 to 10 years ago. The shop had a high turnover rate, and I was there the longest, so I basically learned everything in the store. One day we had a health inspector come in to evaluate the food safety, temperature readings, food storage, etc. I had to slice the tomatoes for night shift, and the inspector took issue with the dirty slicer and asked if it had been cleaned first. I said yes. He asked if I used the scrubby thingy. I forget what it's called. It's like a wire scrub on a stick. I said no, you don't put your fingers near the blades. You just spray it off and dunk it in sanitizer. He chastised me. So I was like, okay, show me how to clean it properly then. If there was a way to do it without getting hurt, then I was willing to learn. My coworker and I stood there and watched him jam the wire scrub between the blades and pull it back. Of course, it got stuck. He shoved it forward again, jamming his knuckles into the blades. Ow! He started bleeding everywhere. My coworker had to shut himself in the walk-in freezer, and he was laughing his ass off. I just looked at my manager, trying to help this idiot inspector get a towel and whatnot, and said, "Yeah, I'm not cleaning the slicer like that." Our next post is by user Luendrill, titled, "Boss trashed me for 5 minutes late, so I complied to their wishes." I worked at a great company, not hourly paid. Official hours are 9 hours and 30 minutes to 12 to 14 hours, but just 1 hour of lunch break. You just have to manage it between those times, up to 18 hours. I love my work and often arrive before 9 and leave after 18-hour 45, so 6:45 PM, so almost 2 hours more of work every day. So 10 hours a week free, but gladly done. I really enjoy what I am doing. One day for my lunch break, I went to have sushi, but the cashier made a small mistake with the bill and we had to stay a few minutes more to regulate it. So I came back to work at 2:05 PM, I left at 1 PM. So 5 minutes more than the usual lunch break. A girl who works there, not my boss or any kind of supervisor, trashed me for being late. Not respectful, yada yada yada. I was really ticked. I am no child. We are not at school or anything, and my job was always done and with my client's satisfaction. So the next day and the following week, I arrived at 7:30 AM precisely and left at 6 PM on the clock. My real boss was quite annoyed, because well, I worked way less than before and I explained the situation. I don't know what happened to her, but she never trashed anyone after that. Alright, that's been r/MaliciousCompliance today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. I want you to tell me what you thought about it down in the comments below, and any times that you might have been maliciously compliant yourselves. How's life in quarantine going, and what are you up to today? I'd love to know, and I'd love to see you in the next episode. Bye!